Hello my lovely jubblies, I'm fantasims and welcome to my channel. So yesterday I spent a couple of hours playing with the new feature that we have with the latest update of the game, and that is that we can stack windows on top of each other. So I spent a couple hours yesterday playing around with the windows and I came up with this cathedral looking stained glass window and posted it to Twitter, and I just logged into my Twitter and noticed that there are 1,000 likes for what I came up with. And I did post this as a kind of a finish me build in the gallery, so you can download it and play around with it as well if you like. But I figured I would just do a real quick tutorial, so sorry if the quality is not that great, but I had a lot of questions asking how I did this, comments thinking that this is insanely difficult to do, and it's actually not. It looks a lot more challenging than it is, so I thought I'd quickly show you how I came up with this design and how you can pull it off in any kind of cathedral or any kind of build that you want to create as well. Alright, now the windows I used to create the stained glass windows are actually all from Realm of Magic, but you know what, it only just dawned on me that I could have used these ones as well, because these look really cool. So I'll show you how I created it with these windows, but I would also encourage you to incorporate these really beautiful ones as well. Alright, so the arch is actually a base game arch, and I love it because it has that cool medieval style. So this is the size it normally is, and I just made it bigger. Also, make sure when you're building, a good tip is to press the F5 key on your keyboard, and that gives you a better range of placement for things. It allows you to arrange things in between the tiles in a way that you normally can't. Okay, so I've sized this arch up by 3 times, and I know that I'm going to want to use this circular window, and I just hit the comma or period key to rotate it the other way. But something you might want to consider, instead of just placing it, this is the second level, instead of just placing it on the second level, I'll show you when you drop down. At the moment it's showing it black on the inside, and that might be because I placed it on a roof, so there's a bit of coloration difference, and this one I think is because it's between levels. It wasn't doing that when I built it, but it seems to be doing it now, so I don't know whether it's a glitch or it's something that always happens. If that's the case and you don't like how that looks all black on the inside, which I'm sure you probably don't, then you could just build a 3rd floor and then put the roof on top of that instead. But total ADD moment, what was I talking about? Oh yes, so putting this window up here on the automatically on the 2nd floor, what happens is if you place the window on the floor or on the actual roof, I'll show you. Let me just move it around a bit and then put it back into place. I'm hitting the 9 key to go up a little bit. When I drop down, see, it disappears and then it leaves a gaping hole. So if you have this kind of a design where it goes above the level of the floor, but you still want to be able to see the detail and you don't have all these pieces missing because you've dropped down to the floor below, what I recommend is drop down to the floor below and instead elevate it from the floor below. If that makes sense. So I'm just going to elevate it with the 9 key. And that way, whether you're up the level or you're down, you at least get to see it and you don't have a bunch of gaps. Alright, so back to creating it. Basically, it's just a matter of placing all the windows. You can use the Alt key to get more specific in the way that you place it, and I encourage you to use different colors to get that stained glass window effect. But also, as you notice, you'll see that sometimes the frames clip into the window next to it, but if you play around with sizes and shrink some of them and make some of them bigger, then you're not gonna get as much of a flickering problem or clipping problem. But as you can see, when you size them down, sometimes the wall ends up covering part of the window. So to remedy that problem, what you can do is you can take a door frame. I'm gonna first start off with the tallest wall doors, because my bottom floor, I want this whole area to be windows. So I'll just take this base game one and I'll change it to a brown swatch so it kind of ties in better. But you can actually shrink it down, and as you can see, it'll leave a hole in the wall. Even though we can place windows on top of each other, there's still going to be areas where a wall might show through, particularly at the top of the wall and the bottom of the wall. And like I just said, if you're sizing windows down, the wall kind of cuts into the bottom of the window. So I found this solution worked best, to put a few of these. I mean, you can do a better job with where you place them so it's more symmetrical. But then when you put a window, like one of these stained glass windows on top of it, it'll still place it against the wall, so it's not going to be like this where it doesn't click onto the wall. It will click onto the wall, and see, you can't even see the door frame through it. So then you can kind of play around with different sizes. My stained glass windows are quite boxy because I wasn't really trying to spend ages building this. I just wanted to see if I could come up with a stained glass window in the first place. So you can play around with some of the other windows too, and see if I just do a different size around the big window, there's no clipping problems. The only challenge when you're building windows like this is really trying to get it to fit within this door frame to get that arch shape. So as you can see here, this is just a really basic design. But you could also incorporate these really beautiful windows too. I haven't tried this, so this is going to be an experiment. Yeah, see, that looks cool too. I should have done this. I should have added these. I should have added these arched ones because that looks really cool. But yeah, see again, now we've got clipping on the top end, and so you'd want to do this for this next floor. But keep this in mind, if you use this door frame method, it is going to make this area see-through as well, like this. Let me go a bit darker so that you can see where the gaps are. And now you've got all these gaps here, but it's okay because you can still put objects there. They're not going to go through the wall. And what I chose here is Discover University has these wall pieces that blend perfectly with the stone colors. And so I just took these, I'll show you, they're in the wall decoration section. And they're a lot bigger, and I just sized it down and did a kind of detailing around the windows to hide these gaps. Just so you know, I haven't actually play tested this. So usually if you put an archway over the door, so let's say that I elevated this up from the first floor, sometimes when you oversize an arch, your sim will not be able to walk underneath it, but because I placed this on the second floor, it's fine. Then it's just a matter of coming up with a shape that fits within this frame really well. And then you can just use the Alt key to get much better placement, because if I don't use it, it doesn't quite line up properly, so just hold the Alt key and then you can place it a lot better. I have no idea what I'm doing, I'm just layering things on top of each other. And there is a little bit of flickering. I don't know if you can see it right here. If I move it around, you can see a little bit of flickering. If you use the Alt key, you can shift it over enough that it hopefully won't flicker. And if you no, see, it's still flickering. So the best thing to do would be to size this window down or use a different window. Or if you use the tool mod, I'm going over into live mode, you can actually scale this window. So let's say its normal size is automatically 1. So I'm going to make it 0.99, see if that helps. Makes it just slightly smaller, and see, no more flickering. So I really recommend you use Twisted Mexie's tool mod. I'll put a link to that mod in the description below. And the great thing about that mod is whatever you build using that mod, other people can still download it. They don't have to have the mod to download whatever you create with it, which is really cool. And this is basically it. This is how I created it. So to fill in some of these gaps where you see how, because this has a curved top, you've got these little sections where the gaps are going to show through. So if I just put a window on top, there's a horrible gap there. If you size the windows down small enough, like this, you can fill in some of those gaps. I'm not doing a perfect job of it right now because I'm just showing you how to do it. You can fill in all those gaps and you can come up with your own really cool design, and there you have a stained glass window, super easy. And even though you can kind of see a little strip of the bottom of the wall, once you put windows over it, you won't be able to see it. Like here, you can't see that connection between the floor and wall, between the levels here, so that's fine. And then what I did, as you can see, the wooden arch doesn't continue down the side of the glass because we don't have any kind of wall decoration or any kind of column that matches this to put underneath it. So I needed a way for it to flow down into the first floor that doesn't have this wood trim, and I just used wall objects to hide it, and these are from Jungle Adventure, and I sized them down. Normally they're this size, but the colors were the best match for this brick color I chose from Discover University. So I just hid the edge because I'll show you the edge is really rough. There's a huge gap on the side where I put one of the doors. And so the same thing, the trim on the way that the bottom looks, it just has a rough edge look and it just needed to be framed. And this is also from Jungle Adventure, and I shrunk it down because the normal size is this. I just made a little base trim with it, and then you end up with this framed section. So a lot of times when I'm trying to hide stuff, because when you start to play around with the Move Objects cheat, which I forgot to mention, you have to make sure you have the Move Objects cheat on. When you have the Move Objects cheat on, you can get carried away with blending things together, but it can leave awkward edges on things that you have to try and hide. So we have some great wall decorations that you can cover that area with. Or if you wanted to, you could make sure that your stained glass window fits within where you can place columns, because you know how you can only place columns on the main lines, on these main grid lines. So you could always do it in a way where your stained glass window, you can use the columns as the edge. But let's say you created a window that went over this area and maybe it finishes on the half tile, then having these wall decorations is a great way to create your own kind of border to hide that area. Okay, now I'll quickly show you how I came up with the shape for this build, because this is a common design in European architecture, particularly with cathedrals. Now, I only created the entrance. If I were to create the rest of this build I'll give you a little tip. The architecture of cathedrals often has a cross shape to it, and then normally you would have the huge stained glass windows on the back end, but you can always copy and paste this room onto the back end so that you don't have to recreate another stained glass window, or you can make a different one. As I showed you, they're not as difficult as they look. But something I wanted to show you is the way that this is at an angle. This is a very common design. It's usually on the edges and the sides. So for example, plus when you build on the angle, it helps create shadows to your build, which makes it have a lot more dimension, and they look a lot better in gallery images. And we all know gallery images of your build are never as good as what your build actually looks like. And then you make a smaller one. So I've made this 2 tiles wide. This one at an angle is just going to be 1 tile wide. In the roof section, you'll want the angled roof like this. And I'm going to get rid of all the edges because we don't want that. And you're going to make it 1 tile wide. And put that on the edge there. And depending on how high your building is going to be, you can also put one up here too. And it blends into the wall. Or like I did, because I made a smaller cathedral, I just put a roof cap on top of it. So take this one, make it 1 tile wide. And then put it on the top like that, and that's literally the shape of this. But the Discover University de-swatches and trims and everything make everything look so much cooler. And then these are actually roof pieces from Island Living, but I love that it added a bit of blue to the color, and I love that it tied into the kind of overall look of the build. And then normally on cathedrals like this, you'll find this similar thing. I don't know what it's called architecturally, but they act as like support beams. Okay, so you'd have these kind of running along the side, and you can put some of the stained glass windows if you wanted to along the side as well. Okay, and then the last thing you would do is you just put on a arched roof. And while your roof is selected, if you hold the Shift and C key down at the same time, it then gives you an extra one of these ball things that you can create a different kind of shape to the roof, as you can see here. Although that's not really a cathedral shape, but just in case you didn't know that you can do that with the roof, I thought I'd show you. And then there you go, you have the beginning stages of a cathedral. You can make them any shape you want, add extra details, and something else that came with the update that is really helpful is in the debug section they added all of the... Sorry, my brain's getting distracted. In the debug section they added all of these shells of buildings that you can see throughout. I've chosen Discover University, but that you can see throughout the world. It's the set dressing. You can even add some of these as decorative architectural detail, and you'll have a cathedral in no time. The last thing I forgot to mention is a great tip. Instead of having to rebuild this on the inside, all I did was build a room around it and then copy and pasted the room to the other side. Then I didn't have to realign the edging of how I hid the gaps around the windows, and that made it a lot easier. So there you go, the stained glass windows are not as difficult as they may have seemed. I hope this was super helpful to you. I look forward to seeing all the things that you come up with. Let me know, tag me on Twitter or in the gallery if you want, if you come up with your own cool stained glass design. I'd love to see what you guys come up with. I'm sure you can come up with something a lot better than me, because literally this is mostly the square windows, because I didn't even think to use those arched ones. But anyway, I had a lot of fun creating this. I'm loving the new patch update, and I hope you are having an incredible day. Thanks for your wonderful support. Love ya.